Boseman Jack Rage was born in a small suburb where life seemed designed for routine and safety. But from a young age, he felt drawn to risk and extreme excitement. As he grew older, he discovered video games and with them, a world full of digital adrenaline. A world that offered him the illusion of control, power, and constant victory. What began as entertainment soon transformed into obsession. Every match, every challenge, and every win became a stimulus that kept him locked in an endless cycle of expectations and rewards. His natural talent for gaming made him stand out quickly, and what was just a hobby for many became his first step toward a professional career. A career where the stakes were high, the prizes tempting, and the pressure to win grew with every tournament. I'm gonna risk a whole another $100. Listen, if I win this, you get 100. If I lose, you don't get anything fair. I'm risking a whole another 150 for you. Just tripped, now I'm just gonna risk another one for, let's go, here we go. No, dude, no way. Oh my god, yes, no. You actually gotta be freaking kidding me. What is this? That should be illegal, dude. The transition from talented player to professional was not easy. Jack faced long training hours, constant competition, and an environment where fame could be built and destroyed in minutes. But the most dangerous part of this life wasn't the tournaments or the rivals. It was the emotional and psychological dependence he began to develop toward the game itself. Every victory fed his ego and his need for validation, while every loss triggered anxiety, frustration, and an almost irrational urge to bounce back, to prove he was superior, to regain the control he felt slipping away. In that process, he began to wager not only his skill but also money, reputation, and time without measuring the consequences. And little by little, the line between entertainment and addiction began to blur. As months went by, the life of Boseman Jack Rage revolved entirely around gaming. Friends and personal relationships were pushed aside. His family started to notice changes, but his obsession was so intense he couldn't recognize the magnitude of the damage he was causing around him. Every tournament, every stream, every bet became a kind of ritual marking his days, and the pressure to maintain a professional image of success pushed him to ignore all warning signs. His life started to resemble an emotional roller coaster. Moments of euphoria, spectacular victories, and the feeling of absolute control, followed by devastating defeats, deep emotional crashes, and an anxiety that grew exponentially. Gaming addiction was not only consuming his time and resources, but also his mental and emotional health, and Jack still didn't seem to realize he was trapped in a cycle that would be very hard to break. As his professional career advanced, Boseman Jack Rage became a reference point for young players who dreamed of succeeding in eSports. His talent, discipline, and charisma on camera inspired thousands. But the reality behind the screen was much darker. The pressure to maintain his reputation, the need to win constantly, and his inability to disconnect from the game were slowly eroding his personal life and emotional stability. Each match was not only a competitive challenge but also a battle against his own inner demons, a silent struggle that no one could see, but one that influenced every decision he made, every bet he placed, and every image of success he projected to the world. As Boseman Jack Rage advanced in his career, his gaming addiction began to manifest in more intense and devastating ways. What had once been hours dedicated to improving his skills became an endless cycle of betting, tournaments, and non-stop streaming, where the line between personal life and digital life blurred completely. Each victory in the game became a stimulus feeding his need for control, while every defeat, no matter how small, generated unbearable anxiety that he could only relieve by playing another match, betting more, risking more. His days revolved around screens, statistics, and the constant pursuit of that feeling of power that only video games seem to offer. Relationships with friends, family, and partners began to deteriorate. Jack isolated himself in his digital world, convinced his professional success depended on every minute spent in the game, though in reality, he was losing control over his own life. The pressure to maintain his image as a professional player and online role model also began to weigh on him. Every live stream, every video uploaded, and every interaction with followers had to project confidence, absolute control, and constant success, while inside, he faced moments of despair and guilt he never showed on camera. His reputation became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it opened doors and earned him admiration. On the other, it forced him to maintain an extreme pace and hide any sign of weakness or failure. This need to appear perfect pushed him into risky decisions, from gaming for endless hours without rest to betting unreasonable amounts of money, hoping to recover losses and sustain his image. The addiction was fueled not only by the game itself, but also by the external pressure from followers and colleagues who saw him as a role model, a figure who seemed to control every aspect of his life with absolute discipline. The physical and emotional impact of this lifestyle became evident. He suffered from chronic insomnia, extreme anxiety, and constant exhaustion, symptoms that could no longer be disguised, not even by the adrenaline of victory. Every loss in a tournament or failed bet felt like a personal blow, a reminder of his vulnerability and the fragility of the life he had built around the game. His closest relationships suffered in silence. Worried family members were ignored, friends distanced themselves, and partners who couldn't handle his obsession walked away. Life outside the screen became secondary, and the digital world, though seemingly rewarding, was really a trap that kept him locked in a destructive cycle. Each day was a battle between the illusion of control offered by the game and the reality of dependence that was consuming his existence. Meanwhile, the followers who admired him only saw the public version, the one that showed success, discipline, and total mastery. No one could perceive the inner tension, the moments of desperation, or the accumulated mistakes that marked his real life. The pressure of sustaining that image and meeting the expectations of thousands created a corrosive effect on his mental health. Stress, anxiety, impulsivity, and a constant feeling of emptiness that no victory could fill. Every stream, every tournament, every bet became a way to escape reality, to fill the void inside, and to maintain the illusion that everything was under control. But deep down, Jack knew he was trapped, and that his life as he knew it was slowly collapsing under the weight of his own addiction. Gaming addiction didn't just affect his health and relationships, it also damaged his career. Opportunities to grow and establish himself as a top name in CS:GO turned into dangerous ground. Impulsive decisions during tournaments, risky bets, and lack of focus in critical moments cost him matches, income, and credibility. Reality began to hit him hard. The fame he had built through talent and charisma was now threatened by the obsession that had allowed gaming to control every aspect of his life. Despite the visible achievements on camera, Jack was losing the most important battle, the one he couldn't show the public. The fight to regain control of his own existence and face the devastating power of an addiction that seemed impossible to defeat as Boseman Jack Rage's addiction intensified. The life he had built through professional achievements began to collapse. Bets that once seemed exciting and controlled turned into dangerous territory, where each decision could mean devastating losses. The constant pressure to maintain his status as a professional player and digital figure pushed him to take bigger risks, and the illusion of control that had sustained him for years began to fade. Every lost dollar, every failed tournament, every impulsive mistake piled up. eroding not only his financial stability but also his self-confidence and mental health. The emotional roller coaster he lived day after day started to leave deep scars, visible only to those closest to him, who silently suffered as they watched his life sink into progressive chaos. His obsession with gaming isolated him further. Friends who once shared his passion for eSports began to distance themselves, unable to handle the intensity of his addiction and the unpredictability of his behavior. His family tried to intervene, offering support and alternatives, but Jack was trapped in a cycle where the need to play and bet was stronger than any warning. Every attempt at disconnection was replaced by the urge to join another tournament, start another stream, or recover past losses, feeding a vicious circle with no end. Real life became hostile and foreign, while digital life offered immediate reward and the illusion of control, a false sense of power that hid his vulnerability and total dependence. The physical and emotional consequences became alarming. Chronic insomnia, panic attacks, extreme exhaustion, symptoms impossible to hide behind the image of success he projected to his followers. His health was at risk, but the compulsion to play overshadowed any concern. Each day turned into a confrontation with his own addiction. Internal tension and external pressure led to impulsive, self-destructive behavior, risky bets that endangered his career, rash tournament decisions that cost him reputation and money, and a constant sense of emptiness no digital victory could fill. The professional life that once seemed bright and full of opportunities was collapsing, exposing the fragility of a success built on destructive habits and the illusion of absolute control. As his world fell apart, Jack's followers began to notice changes in his behavior. The intensity of his videos and streams grew erratic. The confidence he once projected now mixed with frustration and despair. Small details that had gone unnoticed before began to raise doubts about the authenticity of his professional life. Social media, which had amplified his success, also became a stage where criticism and concern reflected the growing worry for his well-being. The image of the unstoppable, successful pro gamer was eroding, revealing a man trapped by his own habits and an addiction controlling every aspect of his life. As the accumulated pressure reached unbearable levels, Boseman Jack Rage's personal life suffered irreparable damage. Broken relationships, lost friendships, and constant anxiety about the next tournament or bet sank him into emotional isolation. Every attempt to regain control seemed to fail, and desperation pushed him deeper into gaming, intensifying his participation in a cycle with no exit, one that affected not only his career but also his mental and physical health in irreversible ways. Reality was becoming harsher. The addiction that had begun as a hobby and professional path now dominated his life completely, putting everything he had achieved in jeopardy, making clear that the illusion of control he projected had always been a facade hiding vulnerability and risk. Over time, the life of Boseman Jack Rage became a painful testimony of the devastating effects of gaming addiction. Accumulated financial losses, wasted opportunities, and constant emotional strain began to take an irreversible toll. Every lost tournament, every failed bet, every stream full of frustration added to a record of personal defeats hidden behind the facade of success he still tried to project online. The illusion of control he had held for years crumbled slowly, along with the reputation he had worked so hard to build. His followers noticed the change. The charisma and confidence that once defined him were being replaced by irritability, desperation, and visible wear that betrayed the damage addiction had inflicted on his physical and mental life. His closest relationships, the support system he once had weakened to the point of breaking. Family who tried to intervene and friends who tried to keep him grounded eventually pulled away. unable to bear the intensity of his obsession and the constant risk his lifestyle carried. Every attempt to regain control was replaced by relapses and impulsive decisions, and the line between his professional and personal life disappeared completely. Isolation deepened, and loneliness became his constant companion, amplifying the anxiety and despair already consuming him. Even visible achievements on camera began to lose meaning, because the personal stability and happiness that should have accompanied them had been sacrificed in the name of obsession and the pressure to maintain an image of success. The psychological impact of this extreme life became more and more evident. Jack experienced chronic anxiety, depressive episodes, and constant stress that followed him even outside the digital world. The compulsion to play and bet had taken control of his mind, leaving little room for reflection, rest, or recovery. Every decision was conditioned by the need to keep the flow of adrenaline and validation video games offered, and every loss was a blow that pushed him to risk even more. The addiction that had begun as a passion and professional path had turned into a destructive force dominating every aspect of his existence, from physical to emotional health, and threatening to destroy everything he had built with talent, effort, and dedication. Social media, which had once amplified his success and charisma, became a constant reminder of his mistakes and the reality he could no longer hide. Critical comments, follower analysis, and testimonies from people who knew his real story began to leak, exposing the gap between the life he projected and the life he truly lived. The public figure who once inspired admiration and motivation began to collapse under the exposure of his vulnerability and the devastating effects of his addiction. Every stream, every post, every tournament now reflected not only his skill but also the price he was paying for the obsession that had allowed the game to take absolute control of his life. Finally, the story of Boseman Jack Rage became a clear example of the risks of professional gaming addiction. Fame, talent, and opportunity could not save him from the emotional, physical, and personal collapse his life faced. Marked by digital victories and real defeats, his journey showed that success visible on social media and tournaments can be deceiving when built on destructive habits and uncontrollable obsessions. Jack's downfall was not sudden or dramatic in the traditional sense, but a slow, cumulative process, an inevitable consequence of years of dependence and impulsive decisions. His story serves as a warning. Behind every image of success and absolute mastery in the digital world, there may be a fractured life, and addiction, though silent, can destroy even the most talented, leaving behind not glory, but the bitter lesson that obsession without control is capable of devouring everything in its path.